Concord director steps down as studio behind historic PlayStation flop waits for Sony decision. This is from Ethan Gach over at Kotaku. It's been 2 weeks since Sony announced that it was taking the unprecedented step of unreleasing Concord, and almost as long since the ill-fated sci-fi hero shooter was officially taken offline. In the time since, Kotaku understands that developers at Firewalk Studios have been in limbo about their future as they await Sony's decision about what comes next for Concord and the team. Whatever ends up happening, game director Ryan Ellis will not be at the helm. Formerly at Bungie, where he served as creative director on Destiny 2, Ellis left in 2017 to lead development on what would eventually become Concord. He told staff at Firewalk last week that he would be stepping down from his game director role and move into a support role instead, according to 3 sources familiar with the change. Sony did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Ellis was the main shot caller on Concord, which, despite praise for its underlying shooter gameplay failed to attract an audience, with analyst Simon Carlos estimating to IGN that the $40 PvP-only game had sold only around 25,000 copies. Abysmal numbers given not just its budget, but the PlayStation first-party brand it represented. Sony acquired Firewalk in 2023 for an undisclosed sum after the game had spent years in production and promoted Concord at both of this year's May PlayStation Showcase and its 2024 one. Quote, Ryan deeply believed in that project and bringing players together through the joy in it, said one former developer who said he felt Ellis had poured a great deal of himself into the game, leading to a ton of stress. Quote, regardless of there being things that could have done differently throughout development, he's a good human and full of heart. Sources told Kotaku that Ellis was too emotional to speak at points during a post-launch studio-wide meeting after it became clear that the game was bombing. In a September 3rd PlayStation blog post announcing Concord's removal from store shelves, Ellis wrote, quote, aspects of the game and our initial launch didn't land the way we'd intended. He added that the team would, quote, explore options, including those that will better reach our players, and works to determine the best path ahead.
At the time of this recording,
yeah,
there's an event going on Tuesday.
PlayStation State of Play tomorrow. We record this on Monday. This episode will go out live at 8. There will be a 5 p.m. Central Time PlayStation State of Play showcase or State of Play streamed live. We do plan on doing a react to it, so make sure you follow us over at twitch.tv/TwoPennyGames to make sure you know all of the information as we do. So we're very excited to see that. I fully believe there was a planned Concord update for this State of Play. Obviously, not going to happen now. Obviously cut from the program. And so now I wonder, does Sony even talk about it during State of Play? I feel like you probably should. But maybe they won't. Who knows? I really feel like they should. There was also reporting from the PlayStation podcast Sacred Symbols from Colin Moriarty, who broke a story saying that Concord had a budget of over $400 million, and it was Herman Holst's baby. Herman Holst is now co-CEO of PlayStation Studios. So if that story is true, and I don't believe that story to be true either, then that could spell some doom and gloom for PlayStation moving forward, especially with Herman Holst still at the wheel. I do not believe Concord cost $400 million to make. That is ridiculous.
Even with the graphical content the game provided, I don't see that.
There's no way. I do believe it became there was also talk of that it had a quote unquote toxic positivity in the development. Nobody was really allowed to talk negatively about any parts of the game. I could see how that's potentially possible. That could kind of correlate. But I also saw other analysts saying, nah, this is probably somewhere in like the 150 to 180 million. That number makes way more sense to me than 400 million. 400 million would mean it's the most expensive game PlayStation has ever produced by a long shot.
And I don't think as much as they had hopes for Concord, I don't think they do that for Concord.
Not for Concord. No. Especially when you look at other new IP that have become successful. Horizon Zero Dawn cost like $85 million to make. And for what Horizon Zero Dawn sold, incredibly impressive. Ghost of Tsushima, I think, was like $60 million or something like that. And then if you compare that to the bigger guys, The Last of Us Part 2, certainly well over 220. I think it was like over 220, something like that. It could have been encroaching on 300, but it definitely didn't break 300 million. So there's no way new IP from a new studio, unproven ideas. There's no way Sony is dumping $400 million into that. Now, the talk is that Firewalk Studios had already, through whatever publishing branch or whatever, whoever was producing the game with them prior to the Sony acquisition had already spent $200 million. So who knows how much is Sony's money or not? But I just don't believe any of these stories to be true. These sound ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Like, are you kidding me? Concord is the most expensive video game ever fucking made? Come on.
You know, the point that the article made, which is that it could see return in free-to-play, I don't think that's entirely likely, but it's possible.
I think Concord's dead. I think Firewalk is right to... The devs over at Firewalk are right to feel nervous about what is going to happen in the future for them. I feel terrible for these devs, man.
Which is why, not only, of course, I don't hope they get axed, I hope they do see it as like, okay, this is a fail. Let's abandon this, move on to the next thing. Because if they're not going to do the whole free-to-play shit, I
think you recycle it.
Yeah?
There's a lot of work there that I think can be repurposed and redone. I think you recycle it, try and get a game in the next 18 months. You know, it'd be an insane amount of crunch on these developers.
But they might want to do it for the purpose of the company.
So
jobs. That's the
thing also, like with the 8-year development timeline thing, it's not in active development for 8 years. That's not how game development works. It was probably in like pre-development stages for a long time as they kind of marinated and formulated ideas and stuff. That doesn't require an entire staff to do. That's 10 people in a room going, all right, well, what about this? What if we did this?
This game was clearly conceptualized at a time where games, the live service model, was a lot more reliable.
Absolutely.
And they didn't expect the change that occurred.
Yeah.
It
also became, there was the headline going around, this game became a victim of development time. It had too much time in the oven, as opposed to benefiting from that, which is the case with most games, as most games will benefit from more development time. This game did not.
Yeah.
It became a victim to it. I do agree with that. Clearly, yes, this game was conceptualized, great word, probably in like a 2016 era, somewhere around there, right?
With Overwatch right there?
Yeah, 2016, 17, somewhere around there. Clearly, that's where the beginnings of Concord started. But as we start getting closer to launch, like, I would imagine most development took place over the last 2 to 3 years. Now, again, is that too long for a game like this? Absolutely. But, it is what it is. Now, in terms of the game, IP, dead. You can't bring back Concord. It's poison. It's poison berries. There's no... You can't... Not even that name. Everything's got to be rebranded. I do agree. The character designs need to be entirely reworked. Pretty much everything to do with art in the game needs to be redone. And that's not cheap. Mechanically, I don't know. I feel like you could probably just recycle a lot of these things, and get through. Obviously, like character ability type things are going to have to be recreated in some way, but like your physics engine is fine. The gunplay, I think, is okay. You can still work within those parameters type thing. There's no reason that they can't just make the game look more interesting, like make a game. It could be pretty much the same game mechanics, but it just like functions a little, or it just functions a little bit differently, but looks entirely different. That's enough to trick the average consumer into thinking that it's a new thing when it's not.
I hope they do something with it, and that doesn't involve them killing a bunch of their workers, basically.
In that, Concord, $40 didn't work. Helldivers 2, $40 did work.
And just saw a resurgence with a balancing patch.
Yeah. I want to load up. I probably will over this next week because I don't have anything to play other than Ratchet and Clank going forward, which I'm excited about. I might load up some Helldivers 2 and see what's going on. Because I'm hearing a lot of great things about what's going on in that game right now. It sounds great.
Or the new enemies coming out soon.
Yeah.
Of course, maybe tomorrow we'll get announced.
But to get back to the point, $40 price tag. One example of it working very well. One example of it flopping very strongly. What happens with Fair Games by Haven Studios and Marathon by Bungie?
See, Marathon's the big one because it seems like there's like if it has turmoil in the development process and Concord by all accounts didn't, I don't think you're going to be able to hit with that one, because it's also, man, that's maybe what they're thinking right now, maybe course correction.
Granted, Marathon extraction shooter, you don't have a big extraction shooter out. I mean, like Escape from Tarkov, but Escape from Tarkov didn't land like an Overwatch, or a Destiny or anything like that, right? It was just kind of a game that had a great moment and a great build, and it's still alive and thriving today, but just on a much smaller scale. Marathon will clearly be looking to hit that Overwatch level, but for extraction shooters. Do you charge for it? Like, I don't know. What is the lesson PlayStation learns from this?
It depends on what their content is planned going forward.
Yeah.
Because clearly it's going to be a game that has going to continuously have work put behind it.
Yeah.
So it really depends on that. I mean, $40, I think, sounds probably like a thing to stick to at the moment.
Yeah. Well, that brings it to the next question, Fair Games, which was, I believe, is slated to come out before Marathon. We have a PlayStation State of Play tomorrow/today, by the time you're hearing this. I would have assumed Fair Games was going to be in that presentation. And now I think you rework some things and you try and figure something else out for it. What? I don't know. But I imagine that's what you're going to have to do, right?
I think maybe what a good thing to do is just go along with it, whatever they had planned, and see the response. Because Concord, that had a horrible response. Overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah.
And, in a kind of
so bad for homie. He can't even, he's heartbroken and distraught.
Bad for that. That guy's probably in the worst feeling position right now.
That sucks, man. I feel so bad for that dude.
Especially when I look at that, I remember looking at that, I said remember because I can't look at it anymore.
Yeah.
That interactive map. I didn't find any of the world building stuff interesting.
No, me neither.
But there was tons of it.
Yeah.
I just imagine the person doing all that work and then it being like, oh, it doesn't matter anymore.
Not the focus. You shouldn't be doing that for multiplayer games. World building is not something we necessarily care about. Everybody got tricked with Overwatch. Nobody played Overwatch to learn more about that world and shit. There was stuff there for you to learn and kind of piece together through voice lines and through those animated shorts, which those animated shorts were great. But people were there for the gameplay, the raw gameplay. That's what matters. And the characters being interesting to see. Winston is interesting. Torbjorn is interesting. Widowmaker, obviously, is interesting. Mercy, like, all of those characters look interesting to see. And I think the style of the game helped that a lot. I mean, we said it before. Concord's mistake is trying to go for photorealistic. They should not have done that. They should have had something more unique to give them more pop and to make an art style that looked interesting. And it's funny that like Cliff Bleszinski's Lawbreakers keeps getting brought up in the case of Concord. Kind of a similar story, right?
I played that game.
It was a game that played well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember playing, I think it was a beta for Lawbreakers and thinking, wow, this is really cool. But from a design, visual level, it was pretty bland. And Concord was the same.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's hope Marathon doesn't look bland, I guess.
I mean, from what they've shown so far, I am not impressed. I am not impressed. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting going forward for PlayStation. Speaking of which, are you excited for this State of Play tomorrow?
Not particularly. Mainly because I don't know what they're doing. Like, it's late in the year.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're even going to do games for this year or if it's all for next year, which...
Yeah, so 30 minutes.
I'm not sure.
30 minutes, 20 games being shown. A mix between PS5 and PSVR 2. I can't imagine there's more than 3 titles for PSVR 2. And in the rest of those games, question marks, right? Like, What are you going to show? Obviously, the big remasters of Horizon and Days Gone have been circulating the internet. I think we get Horizon tomorrow. I do not think we get Days Gone. Days Gone, I think, will come later. Weird choice.
So was Horizon.
I mean, Horizon made sense. Horizon sold like 35 million copies.
From an artistic perspective, I'm looking at Days Gone, I guess. Yeah, when you think of the financial aspect, they really push Aloy and Horizon a lot.
Dude, it sold 35 million copies.
Yeah.
You know how much Uncharted 4 sold?
How much?
8 million.
Wow.
That is a banger of a sales. Like that
makes no goddamn sense to me.
Yeah, Well, what they did, Connor, is they paired Horizon Zero Dawn in with console packages. It was a tie-in it was a pack-in game. So if you bought a PlayStation 4 Pro, which did mildly successful, and I think they then also packaged Horizon with PlayStation 5s when production was an issue with the PlayStation 5. That's where they got all those sales from. It didn't hardcore sell that. It probably sold on its own. Probably sold about 6 to 8 million copies first 2 years on its own, but because of those pack-ins, those shits shot all the way up.
That would make sense. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, but also, Uncharted 4 was a much more expensive game than Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn sold 35 million copies with pack-ins at $85 million to produce, right?
You know what?
So you start looking at these numbers and you go, well, no wonder they fucking shove Aloy down our throats.
It also conceptualizes. I'm just using words now. It also kind of makes sense with how barely anything changed from 1 to 2. Like, scummy guys.
They just made they made a new and bigger map, which is great, and then added some mechanics on top of it. Like, they just gave us more because they knew they could sell 10 million copies off of just more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're smart. And to be fair, those Horizon games are very high quality, but just not the most interesting. Anyways, Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster, I do believe you get that tomorrow. Horizon Lego Adventure probably gets a release date. Ghost 2 maybe announced. That's a reach, in my opinion. Death Stranding 2 is definitely going to be there.
Ghost 2, I could see, because remember, they announced that years before it came out.
Yeah, but at Game Awards.
Yeah. But this is also a game I feel like it's not going to be as long as in development as the first time it came out. I can't imagine they're going to be, entirely different with how the game feels and plays. So,
I mean, I would expect us to get Ghost 2 late next year, early 26.
Which I could still see them like doing a trailer, a little cool looking, reveal trailer, announcement trailer. Game company, big corporations like that are want to do things of that nature. Tavin.
Yeah.
Bloodborne?
No, not happening. I don't know why. I don't know what they're doing with that. I don't know why. The demand has never been louder.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Weird.
So, yeah, it's very, very strange.
My last thing.
Yeah.
New FromSoft game. They said they've already been in production. They were before Elden Ring came out.
Not at a state of play.
No?
FromSoft's too big for that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Blue Point is a question mark that I go, maybe not, but I don't think so.
The last thing was Demon's Souls, which was...
Yes, it's time to know what Blue Point is doing, but I don't think you do that at a state of play. I think you do that at a PlayStation showcase.